Okay. All right. So the next piece that I wanted to touch on before we get into our guest speaker interview with Sven is the SAE International Market Spotlight. So I mentioned in our agenda, Billy Zhu, our general manager for SAE China, was kind enough to do a pre-recorded session. It's a little under 9 minutes long, but it talks about automated vehicle development in China. He did a fantastic job. So it's going to be covering policy timeline, national level policies, the plans and targets, and then also China's provincial policy focus. So there's a ton of information, and as it's playing, I'm going to share his slides for everyone to download as well. And please, if you have any questions for Billy on these topics, you can put them in the chat window and I'll make sure he gets those. All right, give me 1 second here. There we go.
Hello everyone, I'm Billy Xu, the General Manager of SAE International China Office. Today, my presentation will focus on the China Automated Vehicle Policy. As we all know, automated vehicle is an intelligent vehicle that realizes a manned driving through the computer system. Automated vehicles are the key development direction of the automobile industry in the future. For this reason, China has issued a series of policies and plans to promote the development of related industries. In 2015, the China government launched the Made in China 2025 plan, making important plans for the development of intelligent connected vehicles. Subsequently, the mid- and long-term development plan for the automobile industry was released to make plans for the penetration and application of automated vehicles. In 2018, the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology of China and other departments issued the Intelligent Connected Vehicle Road Test Management Specification, which puts forward the requirements for testing subjects, test drivers, test vehicles, etc., to further standardize automated vehicle testing and promote the orderly development of the industry. In 2020, China makes new plans for intelligent connected vehicle and new infrastructure, covering everything from standards technology to application planning. As a product of the integration and the development of cutting-edge technology, automobile manufacturing and transportation industries, automated driving has been raised to the height of the national strategy by countries, and they have seen the commanding heights of technology and industry. Since 2020, China government has intensively deployed the new infrastructure policy, and the new infrastructure has ensured in the wind. According to the scope of new infrastructure defined by the National Development and Reform Commission of China, 5G, artificial intelligence, cloud computing, data centers, intelligent computing data centers, and other information infrastructures in the new infrastructure are closely related to the intelligent transportation infrastructure and automated vehicles. Artificial intelligence and cloud computing are the core supporting technologies of automated driving systems, which help the automated driving system realize perception, behavior prediction, and planning so as to replace human drivers in performing all dynamic driving tasks. As of 2021, the summary of China automated vehicle policies is as follows. The State Council of China organized the compilation and officially released Made in China 2025 on May 8, 2015, which is the first 10-year action plan for China to implement the strategy of a manufacturing powerhouse. Made in China 2025 makes an important plan for the development of intelligent connected vehicle, pointing out that by 2025, it will master the overall and the key technologies of automated driving and establish and improve independent research and development and production systems to complete the transformation and upgrading of the automotive industry. Driving assistant, partially automated vehicles. The market share of highly automated driving vehicles has remained stable, with a market share of approximately 10 to 20%. By 2030, the share of fully automated intelligent equipment will be 10%, and that of automated system will be 40%. In terms of penetration rate of automated vehicle, according to the mid and long-term development plan for the automobile industry, by 2020, vehicle driving assistance, partially automatic driving, and conditional automatic driving systems, the penetration rate of new cars exceeds 50%. By 2025, the penetration rate of automated vehicle will reach 80%, and the penetration rate of level 2 and level 3 will reach 25%. The Smart Car Innovation Development Strategy also mentioned that by 2025, high-level automated vehicles, like level 4 and above, will begin to realize large-scale applications. With the gradual increase in penetration rate, the scale of automated vehicles has grown rapidly. 11 ministries and commissions, including National Development and Reform Commission of China, jointly issued the Smart Car Innovation Development Strategy in February 2020, proposing to achieve mass production of smart cars with conditional autonomous driving by 2025. Realize the market-oriented application of smart cars with a high degree of autonomous driving in specific environment. Looking forward to 2035 to 2050, China's standard smart car system will be fully completed, gradually realizing the vision of a smart car powerhouse. The strategy proposes to build a technological innovation system with technological improvement and demonstration applications as the core, a cross-border integrated ecosystem, an advanced and complete infrastructure system, a comprehensive system of regulations and standards, a scientific and standardized product supervision system, and a comprehensive and efficient network security, the main task of smart car development of the system. China attaches great importance of the development of unmanned vehicle. Unmanned vehicles has become important carriers for collaborative innovation in many key areas, and the construction of a new transportation system. They are also used in shaping the industrial ecology, promoting national innovation, improving traffic safety, and achieving energy conservation and emission reduction. It is of great strategic significance. In 2021, many provinces in China have also issued many policies on automated vehicles. For example, from the perspective of policy focus of automated driving vehicles in various provinces in 2021, Shanxi, Gansu, Liaoning, and other provinces mainly focus on the research and the development of autonomous vehicles related to technology and tackling problems. Jilin, Shanghai, Fujian, and other provinces and cities focus on autonomous driving, the commercial application of automobiles. Zhejiang, Guangdong, Shanxi, and other provinces and cities have also included the construction of test scenarios for automated vehicles into the policy content. So this is the end of my presentation. If you have any question, please contact me with my email on the screen. Thank you for your time and have a great day.
All right, so let's get back into our slides here, and I already see some questions coming in. Again, a fantastic overview from Billy. He had a short amount of time to kind of do a high-level overview, so I think he covered it really well. The slides from his presentation are available in the handout section, and for those of you that have some questions for him, as I see some of them already in the chat, I'll make sure that I pull those aside and send them over to him later on today. Okay, so moving forward, I'm going to welcome Dr. Sven Beiker to the stage. He is the founder and managing director of Silicon Valley Mobility LLC. He's joining us today as a Meet the Expert. We're going to be doing a 2021 review. Hey, Sven, and thank you so much for volunteering some time to join us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So that was, I wanted to start off, that was a really great 2021 recap from Billy regarding AV market in China. Anything in particular that stuck out for you from that?
Yeah, and I definitely agree with some of the comments that were made here from our audience during the presentation. That was very content rich and also hard to digest, especially maybe if one is not really at location there in China, where one can say, yeah, that's really how it's being presented and what's happening anyways. I guess for us here in the Western world, it's always amazing to hear the role that policy and the government plays in all of that, and that apparently you can just plan to become the smart vehicle powerhouse. And planning, execution, and accomplishment are obviously different things, but I guess we also all know that these are very ambitious goals, but also very ambitious policies and activities that are happening there. So I guess, Angie, we will also talk about electric vehicles a little bit later. And for the electric vehicles, I think it's definitely a good assumption to say that the electric vehicle might largely come from China. And hearing all this about automated vehicles, much of it might come from there as well. And especially, I think the last slide with this map where all these activities are happening. I mean, here in the US, it's a lot in Silicon Valley and Texas, Florida, Michigan, and that's about it. But in China, it's really all over the place. And I think that's really what's needed to have these pilot programs and early deployments to not just figure out technology, but also actually to get the general public involved in what's happening there, because after all, we all need to adapt to a different kind of traffic pattern. But also, I guess the infrastructure is very important in that. So I also saw that there's a hotspot for 5G testing in automated vehicles, and that needs to be figured out, and certainly road markings and road signs, traffic lights, and all this. And the infrastructure should not be overlooked. And this is where I can imagine that especially the very strong push from the government might help quite a bit with this. So there's a lot, and very impressive. One should not be scared, but one should feel challenged, I guess, by all of this.
Yeah, it does sound like there's an awful lot of work to do, but I appreciate your positive perspective on
That's
it.
what I'm trying to do. I mean, look, what would negativity help, right?
Yeah.
I mean, should we just say
Right.
it's
That's
just
fair.
China, they can do all of this because their government is very different from governments that we know? I mean, that doesn't help. And after all, the automotive industry is a very global undertaking. And as much as there are obviously trade policies out there, and it seems like, especially now in the year 2021, and we wanted to review what's been going on this year as well. 2021 has shown really the impact of trade policies, trade tensions, to probably use the more appropriate word. We've seen this in battery manufacturing or battery supplies. To some extent, the microchip shortage that we might talk about as well. But certainly for electric vehicles, where trade policies play a very important role. But also, I mean, it's amazing to also follow the stock market, where Chinese companies that used to be listed at the New York Stock Exchange got delisted because of trade animosities, let's call them just that. So That just shows us, as much as we might want to emphasize within SAE that the E typically stands for engineering. Us engineers, we are not alone in this world shaping the future. So all of this needs to fit together. And China's a very interesting powerhouse.
Yeah. No, those are all really good points. And I want to go back to something you had said earlier in regards to electric vehicles. I think when we were kind of setting the stage for this interview the other day, we were talking about EV power in the China market. So you had some really interesting thoughts on that. Do you mind sharing it with the audience?
Sure. Well, I mean, also 2021 has shown how important really the infrastructure is, in this case for electric vehicles, because around October or so, when the Chinese holidays were coming up, and many people wanted to travel with a brand new battery electric vehicles to see their families, that they had a shortage in fast charging along the highways. And shortage is not just you couldn't find a charging spot. It was actually there was not enough electricity at the right place. And China's right now, I looked up the numbers just this morning again. China's right now at 6, or last year, 2020 actually, was 6% plug-in electric vehicle market share. That's about a little bit less than 3 times what's in the US. So they're about 6%. Europe is now getting about 15%. But for next year, I also just read this morning, the CEO of Lotus says that they might go to 30%. Pretty ambitious number, but definitely well in the double digits, new vehicle market share being plug-in electric. So the question really is, how does the infrastructure keep up with this? And what we saw in October, that you couldn't get enough electricity to these vehicles, really brings up the question. It's not just about the automotive industry and maybe policy and investors or something, but also who provides the infrastructure. Like it's the utility companies, it's the local supply companies. And that's interestingly enough where here at SAE, where I'm also involved in an activity that's called the Office of Sustainable Energy. And that wants to look at how energy and transportation are really interwoven, and definitely transportation is dependent on energy. And what we need to make sure that what happened there in China does not become commonplace, and hopefully not so much here in the US, that you got this electric vehicle and now what? Where does the juice come from? So it really takes a village to figure all of that out.
Yeah, that's and I thought those were really good points. And in regards to the challenges that China was facing, where it was really just having enough electricity. And I think you touched on this already, but can you elaborate more on the similarities in other markets? Just in your opinion, how is that going to affect other markets?
Well, I mean, again, certainly China is a very particular market when it comes to policies, but also subsidies and the industry as well, because I think it was not this past year, but the year before that the government also said, we have way too many electric vehicle companies. We need to consolidate those. So I'm not sure if there would be something that might be said here in the United States. We have way too many electric vehicle companies, but you get the point. Other than that, I want to say the challenges are pretty similar across the globe. That it's like, how do you get consumers to make the right choice? And there you can basically already stop and discuss for the rest of our session, what is the right choice? Is it an battery electric vehicle with 100 kilowatt hour battery, or should it be more modest, just 60 kilowatt hours? Should it be a plug-in hybrid? But that's also what governments across the globe are trying to figure out. In my home country, Germany, there's a big debate about the plug-in hybrids, that many people, especially those who get a company car, get a plug-in hybrid, but they never plug in. They just get their green certificate, and then they say, oh, I still get my gasoline and can drive 200 kilometers per hour on the Autobahn. So that's what governments across the globe are figuring out. But also, they are definitely keeping a vigilant eye on one another. So it's certainly that, whether we'd like to admit it or not, US and Europe, we are looking at China. What are they doing? What can we learn from them? But certainly China does the same thing. For sure, like figuring out electric vehicle design and the private sector. So again, the challenges, I would say, are very similar across the globe, but policies are very different. Industry maturity is very different. I mean, we don't have a Tesla in Germany to that extent. Obviously, the much more the established premium industry. But again, what I said earlier, it's a global industry, and that means the product goes global, but also you learn about good and best practices globally.
Yeah, and so you made an interesting comment earlier about the consumers in Germany. They might be given an electric or a hybrid vehicle, but they're not necessarily leveraging the plug-in option. So it sounds like there's incentive to have those for that green sticker, but then it's also a choice by the consumer. So I'm curious, why do you think they're not plugging in those vehicles and they're using
Well, because
gasoline
it's a
instead?
pain in the neck, right? And
Yeah.
so I was on a panel discussion just a couple of weeks ago, and it was one of these California and Germany panel discussions on what can we learn from one another. And someone brought up a very interesting point that I had not thought about. I mean, we always say, well, in Europe, isn't it all cute and it's also cozy and it's much smaller and all of that. And that's not really true that everything is small, but it is different. They have, for instance, these duplex garages. So the duplex garage goes, you are in your residential building, underground parking, and because space is so scarce, they have actually 2 parking spots in one. Basically on a little aluminum platform that goes up and down so that you can have 2 vehicles in one parking spot, and the platform goes up and down.
Okay.
And the interesting thing is that there's a weight limit on this aluminum platform. And the plug-in hybrid vehicles might get too heavy so that you cannot actually get it in there anymore. Especially someone said when the tank is full, then it doesn't really work. So that's not directly to why do they not charge, but why is it more of a hassle, maybe such a vehicle? But then when you get in this duplex garages, even if you don't have a weight limit, do you actually get charged where you park your vehicle? Does your landlord or your housing company, do they provide you charge at your parking spot that's designated to you, like your D21 or whatever your parking spot is? Oop, tough one. On the D charging, on the D spots, we don't have charging. You have to get an F. How do you get an F? Oh, once someone else moves out, and then you can move to F. So that's just a thing that people say, you know what, charging is definitely still not the same as if going to the gas station and it takes you 5 minutes and off you go again. Those who are, especially here in Silicon Valley, I mean, people who love the Teslas, they say, what do you mean? I just charge every night and never go to the gas station again. Last time I went to a gas station was 3 years ago. But it shows you a lot about the consumer behavioral shift that needs to happen. And again, for these plug-in vehicles, from a technology standpoint, I think it's a very good solution, and happy to discuss why. But for the consumer, it's actually relatively easy to fall back to the old paradigm and never really go electric.
Yeah. Oh, no, that makes sense. Thanks for elaborating on that a bit. I thought that was interesting. So we're here to talk about a 2021 recap, which I feel like is an ambitious thing to do in 20 to 30 minutes, but 2021 has been an interesting year with many new technologies getting a lot of attention in the media, also among VCs. So looking back on the past 12 months, what are the real trends that are likely to stay around, in your opinion?
Well, what is definitely going to stay around are those 4 topics that we always like to talk about: automation, connectivity, electrification, and sharing. So ACEs or CASE, whatever you want to call it. So these are definitely going to stick around. And what I always like to say, the trend or the direction is clear. The question is just about the speed. And so therefore, we can debate when will we get to level 4 automation, but that's maybe for a different segment of this series. But what's definitely going to stick around, I would say that 2021 was or will be called in hindsight around the time when electric vehicles really took off, because I do note that range anxiety is not really that much discussed anymore. We do talk about charge anxiety, what I said earlier, that charging doesn't work that well. But definitely electrification is something where 2021 we can say from a technology standpoint, which is the battery maturity and size, but also the whole vehicle concept, that we don't just get these converted gasoline vehicles that now happen to be electric, but the real electric vehicle design, that many of those showed up on the market now, and there are definitely more to come. So that's something I think where 2021 was turning point, or definitely a milestone that will be seen in hindsight as a very important one. For automation, I'm not sure if I can point to a certain technology in automation. I would say there's more realism and professionalism now in that space, which really is the former renegades, especially those out of Silicon Valley, that were just like saying, well, move fast and break things. They are much more now, okay, here's the technology, but how do we make it safe and usable, and how can we turn it into a business? I think that's also a very important time right now, where we see the technology is more or less set. I mean, AI, artificial intelligence, is making more and more inroads into the automotive space. One can discuss whether LiDAR is needed or not. For this, I encourage you to invite Elon Musk to your show to get an interesting perspective on LiDAR technology. So it's a laser scanner sensor. I think they're very promising now, also production solutions for this. So there are production vehicles now launching that have LiDAR technology on them. And that seems like for next year will get us to level 3 automated vehicles. So that's a very interesting milestone. And one thing that is sometimes missed in these discussions when it's about future mobility and technology, I think, is software over-the-air updates. Again, Tesla, arguably the pioneer in this space, but now also that we see that many other companies, especially the higher end vehicles like Mercedes, Volvo, Cadillac, Ford, and the top line vehicles, they do software over the air updates where they can fix things on the vehicle. And that's also around now. 2021, I think, was a very important year where the traditional car companies trust that they can handle this technology as well. So exciting times.
Yeah, so I have a follow-up to that. You kind of led into another question the other day when we were kind of formulating this interview and what we wanted to cover. You said something that really stuck out to me. You said you have two hearts beating inside of you as it relates to autonomy, traditional mobility, and then new mobility, or the Silicon Valley, so to speak. So can you speak more to our audience what you meant by that?
So I mean, for me personally, I started in the traditional automotive industry. It was in the mid 1990s at BMW corporate R&D headquarters in Munich. I always wanted to be an automotive engineer. So that heart was very, very strong. And I don't know if I should put it on my left side or right side. But then 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, I moved to Silicon Valley. Actually back then with BMW to do trend and innovation scouting here in Silicon Valley. And that was about 20 years ago, give or take. And back then I asked, what would I do as an automotive engineer in Silicon Valley? Well, back then the iPod had just launched and digital rights management was a thing, and nanotechnology and wireless sensor networks. And then me as an automotive engineer. But I thought, well, hey, look, if nothing else, then I have a good life. Why not? Obviously now it looks very, very different. Automotive and Silicon Valley belong together, at least for the time being. And the two hearts beating in my chest is really that I still have a lot of appreciation and understanding, I would say, for the traditional automotive industry. But also really for Silicon Valley, how things are being done here. I mean, there's move fast and break things. I'm not sure if I would recommend to break things, especially when it's safety critical systems. But you get the
Right.
point that things just move at a much faster pace here. And the best way to show the two perspectives is really whether the glass is half empty. In the traditional automotive industry, it's always half empty, like, oh, we tried this, it doesn't work, and think about all the challenges. Or the glass is half full, and that's Silicon Valley, where you say, well, what if we can do this? And don't think about the problems, think about the opportunities. And bringing both together, that's, well, obviously exciting to me, which is why I made my living here. But it really needs both, and that's also for me great to see. Again, in my first 5, almost 10 years around here, I was asking, well, automotive in Silicon Valley, really? And then it was a little bit about us versus them, like who has the upper hand in that play. And now it's really become a lot of collaboration, that these two worlds definitely have come together, and that's exciting for me to see. And believe it or not, I can live very, very well with 2 hearts in my chest. It does not tear me apart. It gets me a lot of energy.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. So, even to kind of further that traditional versus, I think sometimes we refer to it as new mobility, those two different hearts that you have. So in often cases, the traditional automotive industry is involved in a lot of SAE things like standardization processes, publishing technical content. But what about those new mobility companies that you're working with out of, well, then it's not just Silicon Valley, it's all over the world. What do you think those companies should consider getting involved in that the traditional automotive companies are involved in, just to help collaborate more?
Well, let's see. I mean, first of all, I would have a hard time picturing a startup here in Silicon Valley or anywhere in the space. And they have an idea. We want to disrupt this industry. And the first thing they do is to get an SAE standard and read about it. I think that's not going to happen. Let's just face it, right? And the question then is, how do we make sure that this quote unquote disruptive thinking and really this passion and energy to change the world, how the traditional thinking can become part of this, and quite frankly, how SAE can be part of this. And I think that's just where it's very important to have a few but well-defined hallmark publication standards that are really in there, that are commonly being used, and where also these entrepreneurs who just get started early on get an idea what they are getting themselves into. To use a quote, one of the actual founders of Tesla Motors, not Elon Musk, he was actually becoming a founder retroactively, but Martin Eberhard, one of the 2 founders in Silicon Valley, said, to launch a startup or a venture, you have to be naive, because if you are not a little bit naive, you're not going to do it. And there's a lot to it, because we have this talking here in Silicon Valley, we don't know what we don't know. Because if we knew what we don't know, then we wouldn't be doing it, right? So, but that's a way of saying these hallmark publication standards. For instance, J3016, the definitions of the levels of automated driving. That's something that probably everybody has heard about when it comes to starting a new AV venture. And that's important, that they also understand when they start that they are not on a level playing field. It's not starting from zero. It's not in a vacuum. It's, after all, a safety critical undertaking to work on automotive technology. It's something that happens in the public and that put people in harm's way, tragically enough, quite often. But that there's a framework for this, and that this can be eased into what these disruptive thinkers are doing. So it's, I know, a little bit complex what I'm describing here, but that's in the end what it is. Because don't forget, what these companies are doing, these startups, is very often called the fuzzy front end. So it's hard to grasp, but we need to make sure that we can provide resources to that, and that it's current and timely. And SAE has also some good publications that purposely do not just look at a 3-year horizon to develop a standard, but also that's much more timely and crisp. And that's consumed by startups. I know that.
Right. Okay. No, that's all good. Okay. So I'm seeing some questions come in, and I apologize. We got so lost in our interview.
I know, yeah, there's so much to
even
talk
on
about. Hey, if you want to recap an entire
there is so
year
much to
and
talk
then
about.
think about Silicon Valley and automotive, there's so much to
20
talk
minutes.
about.
Yeah. So we do have a few minutes left before we've got to move forward. But Ralph asks, don't you think, Sven, and I think this came back when we were talking about EV power in the electricity. Yeah. So he had said the U.S. has an extra challenge in popularizing EVs because of gasoline prices, 50 to 60% cheaper than they are in the EU.
Yeah, it definitely plays a role. So it is to some extent a monetary or an economic consideration for consumers as well, but not only. So what I see, for instance, here in the Bay Area, but also many other places in the country, that a good motivation for people to get an electric vehicle was this carpool lane sticker, so that you can actually get in the high occupancy vehicle lane because you are electric, because you're good, you're green. And that might go farther than just saving on gasoline or the price of electric vehicle charge versus a gallon of gasoline. So I definitely will say, if gas prices are low, you always see that back in the days, hybrid vehicles and now also maybe battery electric vehicles take a little bit of a hit because gasoline is cheap. But that's definitely not the only thing. It's an additional dimension to consider, I think. So I would definitely agree with Ralph.
Yeah. Robert asked, where does hydrogen play out in timing in this transformation?
So in that sense, I'm working on my next EDGE report, and the next EDGE report is about energy in transportation. And there we will look at the entire spectrum, all the energy sources and energy carriers for transportation. And hydrogen plays one of the most important roles in that publication. And the reason why it's one of the most important roles is because it could be the ultimate solution, but we are not entirely sure where and how to get there. Because in hydrogen, there's this, for one, the debate, how do you get from gray to blue to green hydrogen, which basically describes where does the hydrogen come from, and what technologies do you use to capture the carbon emissions, or can you use renewable energies? So there's something in the overall efficiency and sustainability assessment. Where does hydrogen fit in there? Especially if you were to say you use electricity to convert it into hydrogen, to supply the hydrogen to the point of filling for the vehicle, and in the vehicle you convert hydrogen back into electricity. Is that really more sustainable than using the electricity and put it directly into a battery and then into a motor? So that needs to be figured out. And that's something, what I mentioned earlier, this Office of Sustainable Energy here at SAE, where we want to talk about how do you define levels of sustainability, to somewhat similar to the levels of driving automation that are very well established, that we can maybe do something similar. What does sustainability mean anyways? And in that sense, Robert's question is about the timing for hydrogen. I personally think hydrogen in transportation has a great applicability for long haul and heavy loads. So long haul trucking might be good. I'm not sure if I see hydrogen powered vehicles for commuter vehicles, and even less for smaller vehicles to get us around town. Those are going to be battery electric, I would think. But hydrogen does have its play in long haul trucking, I would guess.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to be featuring the Office of
Oh,
Energy in
right,
our
right.
April Move with SAE segment. Yeah. So we'll have lots of time to talk about that as well. So we do have to move forward with our other speakers, Sven. But I was wondering, there's still questions in the chat. Do you mind
I can
answering
do to the
those
best of my
people in the
ability.
chat?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And I did share out Sven's research that he's done with SAE as well. If you're interested in reading more from him, he has several EDGE research report titles all on this particular topic. So I did push out an action button in the bottom left-hand corner. It'll take you to Mobilus to read those titles. Sven, thank you so much for taking some time to interview with me today.
It was fun.
I really
Thanks very
appreciate
much,
it.
and happy holidays to everyone.